Okay, we are going live right now. Okay, Bob, can you talk and be heard? Okay, we can't hear you.
There he is.
Odd.
Nope. Nope.
I have no, I don't see any reason why we shouldn't be able to hear you right now.
Bob, is your mic on your computer? We can't hear you at all.
Okay,
Greg?
Cindy, you should be able to talk now.
Greg, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, great.
We don't have you on camera, Cindy?
Evidently not. Maybe next time.
Okay, Bob, I
Greg.
suggest you try the call-in number. I'll send it to you right now in an email, just so you can get on. And I think you also have a feedback issue on your computer, so I'm going to mute you from here.
Here. Hey, Stu.
Hey, Kathy, how are you?
Okay, Bob, I just sent you the
I'm
info.
muted. Hi, Stuart. We're live on YouTube right now.
Okay. Hello,
Are you?
YouTube.
Okay, so we're waiting on John and Richard.
Okay, Greg, can you hear me?
I can hear you, Bob.
Okay,
I can hear you, but we can't see you now.
It's one or the other tonight. We can't seem to get both.
okay, how's that?
There he is.
Yeah.
Okay, we got you.
Okay,
We are live on YouTube, so you might want to mute until the meeting starts. I learned you can mute by just pressing the space bar.
wow, that's exciting.
When I press it, I lose the video. Whatever. Hello.
I guess everybody says the same thing when they do this. They feel like they're a member of the Brady Bunch. Let's not sing.
Greg, can you promote Christy to a panelist? Thank you.
What's going on
Hey, Christy.
Hey, Christy, you're muted.
I'm muted. Yeah, I figured that out. Hi.
Yeah.
The people joining us were streaming live on YouTube just now, just so you know.
Okay. John, is that John Burney that's joined? Just want to make sure you can.
If people turn their video on, you can, so we.
We don't have video, but we have audio. It's Nikki Lavanos from Fenimore Road Property.
Oh, okay, that's the wrong John. So I'm going to move you back to participant. Or to attendee, sorry. Wait for John Burney. Okay. And Richard, are you on?
I'm on, but I have no video.
Okay, if you click the start video button in the bottom left-hand corner, you should.
Oh,
be
there
able
we
to-
go. I didn't see that. Okay.
Okay. And
All right, we're good.
John Burney
Cindy,
is
can you
here.
hear me?
Hello, Richard.
Oh, there you
Oh.
are.
See, Cindy.
I found it.
Okay.
You lost it.
Oh, wait, you lost it. We lost you. And we just need John.
okay.
Okay, John, are you on? Can you hear us? I think you have to unmute yourself.
Unmuted. Got it. Okay. I am
And
unmuted.
turn your video on.
Okay, and you can.
I'm here. And what else? Start video. Okay. Allow.
There you are.
Okay.
Here I am.
Okay.
Okay.
Hey, John.
Everybody should be able to see themselves. Be helpful if you stay on the screen. Okay. Greg, is this everyone that we're expecting from our end?
From our end, yes.
Okay, so we can open the meeting? Okay. What time is it?
7:03.
7:03. Okay, let's open the meeting. Welcome, everyone. This is the 5th 2020 meeting of the Village of Mamaroneck Planning Board. It looks very different from what we're all used to. Home, and hope that you are too. And practice social distancing. So because this is very different, I ask you to bear with us. Hopefully we won't have many issues. And I don't want to hear any okay boomer jokes. And plus we have a young person who knows what he's doing. I'm going to turn the mic over to Greg, who's going to explain the logistics for tonight's meeting before we get started.
thank you. And I don't always know what I'm doing, so I just wanted to put that out there. So before I get into all the logistics, I just wanted to mention that I hope everybody's safe and staying healthy. And I wanted to mention that we have up-to-date information on the village website regarding the coronavirus. There's near daily posts that we're putting up. And we also urge the residents to sign up for our robocall system, which updates you on your phone. You get direct calls to your phone regarding emergency situations, important events. To sign up, you just text SWIFT 911 to 99538. Okay, so anybody who's watching this meeting from home on LMC TV, you can actually interact with the board and make public comments if you join through the Zoom link that's listed on the Planning Department website. The instructions are also on the website, and you can open both of those, and it gives you pretty detailed instructions on how to connect. And if you can, and you are watching this through YouTube, LMC has asked me to ask you to consider subscribing to their YouTube channel, and just click the subscribe button. Now, in terms of how we're going to run the meeting, when the board goes to a public comment period, anybody who's using the Zoom app, you'll be asked to raise your hand, which is a feature that should be shown on your screen. It's a button that you click, and it'll show up to us that you're raising your hand and that you'd like to make a comment. And then I'll go through each person individually and unmute you so you can make your public comment. And then when you're done, I'll mute you again, and we'll go to the next person, and so on. So if you'd like to try that feature now, I encourage you to try raising your hand now, just so you can make sure it works, and we can make sure your public comments can be received. Okay, we've got a few. Great. We got several people able to raise their hands, so that's good. Lastly, if you're calling on a phone, the wave feature is not available. So I urge you to email me at gcutler@vomny.org, and I'll unmute you. Just send me an email with your phone number, and I'll be able to identify you in the list and then unmute you. And if you have any other questions during the meeting, just send me an email, and I'll be checking my emails through the meeting, and I'll be able to respond to you quickly. And that's it.
Thanks, Greg. And thanks for all the work you did trying to figure this all out so that we can do this. There are 4 items on today's agenda. The first 3 will have hearing an opportunity for the public to speak. The last item is a work session on Hampshire, and there will be no public comments taken during that. So with that, the first item on the agenda is 707 Fenimore Road, AKA 335 Fayette Avenue. The public hearing for this, it's a public hearing for a site plan and special permit to operate a seasonal indoor softball training facility. The public hearing was opened meeting on the 12th, and at this point in time, is there someone here from the applicant to add anything to our information? Anything that else we need to know? What we were missing 2 weeks ago was a determination from the zoning, from the building department that everything was zoning compliant. That's all we were missing. We got that determination. So if there's someone here from the applicant that would like to add anything, Greg, do you have somebody?
I have nothing to add because the resolution should be in front of you. It's really relatively straightforward.
Who's speaking, please?
Nikki Lavanos
Hi.
from Fenimore Road Properties. I don't have video, but I can see you.
Okay. Okay.
Hi there.
You. Okay, we do have a draft resolution in front of us.
Yes.
We did speak to Greg earlier today to correct the second paragraph where it stated that we held a public hearing on March 12th. We corrected it to say that we opened a public hearing And I'm assuming we're going to close it after this, and so we corrected that. Greg, what happened?
What happened?
What happened?
I don't know.
There's the
He's bringing
resolution.
up the resolution.
Okay. Okay. There was one typo that he corrected, and so it was just minor things. So we took it off camera.
Okay.
Does anybody on the board have any questions? And then we can open it up if any member of the public would like to ask any questions or say anything. Anybody on the board?
Nope.
Is there any member of the public that would like to participate and make any comments on this application out of the board? What do they
Yeah,
have to do?
please,
They have to raise their hand? Is that what it is?
yeah,
Greg?
please click the raise your
Please
hand
raise your
button if you
hands.
have a comment, or send me an email.
Okay, we'll wait a couple of minutes to see if you get an email from any.
Oh.
You lost somebody.
I think somebody's
I'm gonna
bedroom.
mute, I'm gonna mute
May
Richard.
I recommend to the people who are participating here, please turn your cell phones off or mute them or something. And if you have any other noise making device in your room right now, I had to lock the dogs out.
I'm seeing no comments on my end.
Okay, no one wants to make a comment. Okay, can I have a motion then to close the public hearing?
So
I'll
moved.
make the motion. Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
And I vote, okay. And we have the resolution in front of us. Does anybody have any other changes they would like to make to the resolution? Any comments? No? Do I have a motion to accept the resolution as amended?
So moved.
A second?
Second?
Okay, let me call the roll. Lou?
Yes.
Richard?
Yes.
Cindy?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. Okay,
Thank you. Be safe
Yeah,
out
Nikki.
there.
okay, stay safe.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, the next item on the agenda is a site plan and special permit application for 355 Phillips Park Road. Now, this also came before us at the last meeting. However, we did not open the public hearing because we had some, this is the one where we didn't open the public hearing. There were some issues with notification. So I need a motion to open the public hearing on this.
So
application.
moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. The applicant spoke to us at length about this, but I see we have the members of the applicant's team here. So before we open the public comment period on this public hearing, can you designate one or somebody to start? I'm assuming that's going to be you, Ms. Adana?
Yes, Chair.
Get started, and if there's anything you want to reiterate or add to what you told us 2 weeks ago.
Well, thank you. This is Christy Adana from Silverberg Atlantis. We do have also here with us this evening, Robert Stanzial, who's the architect, Michael Stein, the engineer, and Dominic Brescia for the applicant. I would like to just first say best well wishes to the board, your staff and consultants, and thank you to Greg for orchestrating all of that. As the chair mentioned, we did appear before the board for an initial presentation in March. Basically, just to briefly reiterate, what we are proposing is a mixed-use development with commercial space and parking on the ground level and 6 one-bedroom units on the second and third floor. There was initial proposal in 2018 that was to demolish the existing structure and construct 5 townhomes with separate curb cuts and tandem parking. Since that proposal, based upon comments we received from this board at the time, as well as changes to the zoning text enacted by the village board in 2019. So now what we are proposing is to keep the existing structure, which will have commercial space and parking on the ground level, and then to construct 2 additional stories that will have 6 residential units on the second and third floor, 1 bedroom. There will be 7 parking spaces on site and 4 off-site for an easement. And the second and third story significantly will only be constructed over a portion of the existing structure to ensure there is no new construction within the 50-foot setback of the water, which is one of the new requirements in the code. There will also be a fair and affordable housing unit as required by the code. At the board's last meeting, this was declared an unlisted action, and the board declared its intent to be lead agency. That notice of intent, I understand, was circulated on March 13th to all involved and interested agencies. Since that time, we have made some initial changes to the proposal, which will be continuing with our next submission. At the recommendation of this board, it's no longer, the ground floor will no longer be designated as strictly retail, and now will be more of a general commercial to allow for an office use as well, so that there's more options for tenancy in that space. And as I'll let Mr. Stanziel explain, in response to comments from this board, there have been some changes to the design of the facade. So I'll turn it over to Mr. Stanziel now. We also, as I mentioned, have Michael Stein here to preliminarily discuss the engineering for the project, which was not addressed at the last meeting. And we will be submitting those plans in advance of the meeting, along with a landscape plan, which depicts roof gardens and landscaping on the roof. We will also submit responses to the memoranda that have been submitted by your consultants. So I won't take up any more of your time unless you have any specific questions for me. And thank you again for your time under these circumstances.
Does anybody on the board have any questions for Ms. Adana? Okay.
Chair, just so you know, just before the meeting, we did circulate, the applicant did submit a landscape plan and a revised rendering. I don't know if everyone was able to see that through their email. It was sent kind of late today, but I wanted to make sure we forwarded it. And it's also posted with the agenda.
All right,
Yes.
well, if it came late today, those of us who were working on other things didn't see. That's okay, because tonight we can't do anything tonight because we're still waiting for the lead agency determination to come back, and we have to wait 30 days from when it was sent out. So we're just going to advance today. Like we said, we open the public hearing and give the public an opportunity to speak. Just before we continue, I just want to remind, if you're not speaking, you might want to mute your mics. For the participants here, you'll see, if you look at your screen, there are some people who aren't on that are muted this way if you make any sounds, because you're sitting very close to your mic. So we're all going to learn as we go along here. So if you're not speaking, and you can mute your mic by pressing the space bar if you're using a laptop, or just there's a command in the lower left-hand corner on your screen. Okay, no questions for Ms. Adana? Okay, Mr. Stanziali, you want to speak about some changes to the design?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Appreciate it very much. And I thank you for putting this meeting together. This is amazing. I'm a little technically challenged on this, so bear with me, but thank you. Thank you, Greg. Thank you, Christy, for your comments. I was not able to attend the last hearing, but I did hear some of the comments from an architectural standpoint that were put forth from some of the board members, and we hopefully responded to that. I'm just going to put on our, let's see, our
should be, if you're trying to share your screen, it should be right in the center at the bottom of your computer. It should be an option to share screen.
Okay. Let's see, our rendering that we proposed that last time, well, let me show you a new one anyway. So this is, oh, it's not the one I want. I'm sorry. I'll get there. Bear with me.
That's new.
This was the original rendering that we present. I think Dominic had presented last week to the, or last month to the board. And there were some concerns about the starkness of the building and perhaps the parapet itself being a little bit too heavy on top. So we did take that into consideration, and we did introduce some more brick on front of the building. We actually updated the rendering itself because there were another set of balconies that had to be added on the front facade. And we brought the brick up to the upper parapet and introduced some additional railings on there as well. Lighten up that front facade. Just to get another one up here as well. Nope, that's the same one. I'm sorry. This is a little bit different where we brought the brick entirely around the side of the building as well, eliminated the ephes or the stucco finish on the side, and just kept the sort of the concrete look or the stucco on the base of the building, which is the existing building, which is pretty much what it is now. So the balance of the new addition, 2 stories, would be entirely in brick or brick veneer, and again, lighten up the parapet with some additional railings as well, just to lighten it up. And again, the roof will be a landscape roof as well as the lower roof here that I have, and you can see my pointer, which will be accessible. Both will be accessible to the residents of the building. We did prepare a preliminary landscape plan, which we're going to get into more detail as well, and which shows some landscaping by the waterfront as well as a plan for some rooftop landscaping and activity that'll take place on the building. So but we have to really we got that today, and we have to look into that a little bit further. So we'll get back to you on that with some final designs. As Christy mentioned, the space on the ground floor could be open to any commercial space, a service use or an office use as well, and not necessarily a retail space. But the parking that we have will provide for the the proposed residential units, as well as any particular use that may be in that commercial space. Thank you.
Chair, we did send this landscape plan to Susan Oakley just as we received it this afternoon. So there was no way that she could have commented on it, but I'm sure she'll comment for the next meeting.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions or comments?
Yeah, Kathy, I have a question. Is it necessary in adding the 2 residential floors to the existing building, do they need ZBA approval for that?
That would be a question for Greg.
I don't believe so.
I don't.
So where they're adding the floors is outside the 50-foot buffer. And the 50-foot buffer applies to erecting or constructing a new space within 50 feet of the river. So it does not require a variance.
So it's zoning compliant.
It's zoning compliant.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we have a memo to that effect?
It's in my review memo, and we
Okay.
have a zoning compliance.
Yeah, we did get a
That's been
checklist.
done. Yeah.
Right.
Okay, a checklist is not exactly a memo from the building inspector, though. I mean, I'd like to see it, just a paragraph written out of why this is zoning compliant.
Oh, what we did circulate was the zoning compliance form. That's pretty standard in his review.
Yeah, it's what certifies that it's zoning compliant.
I remember always seeing a memo. I mean, short memo, I thought. Again, I recall the checklist, but is it a problem to memorialize it somehow?
Let's request a memo.
You can certainly request a memo.
Yeah, if you want more information than we have, we have the building inspector's determination, and we have Greg's memo. If you want another memo from the acting building inspector, I guess we can ask.
Well, I just don't remember seeing a memo from the building inspector. I saw a checklist.
I don't
That's
think
all.
we've ever seen a memo from the.
We've
building.
never seen a memo
Right,
from the
right.
building inspector.
No, I mean,
It's always
I've
been the
on planning
planner.
board. It's been 2 years. I've never seen a memo from the building inspector.
Okay, in a
Anything.
previous life, I recall seeing, when there's a potential question, that's all. I think most of the time there's no issue, but this is a little different because of the change in zoning and everything else. Somebody can just write 3 sentences in a memo, that would be great.
You mean the change in the zoning code?
Yeah,
Oh, because of the new code.
yeah.
Okay, all right. Great. We want to,
We could certainly ask the building inspector to provide that.
anybody else have any questions of the applicant?
Yeah.
Before we turn this to the
Yeah,
public.
Kathy, it's John.
Hi, John. Yeah, I can see you.
Okay. Can you just talk under the presence or the new zoning, I guess, how the parking works with the unit counts?
I think the applicant can address that.
No, I'm not, sorry, not you, Kathy, the applicant, yes.
Right.
So, can you hear
Ms.
me?
Donna?
Okay. So our understanding of the code is that 1 unit is required for each of the 6 residential, 1 parking space, excuse me, is required for each of the 6 residential units. So that would be a total of 6. There's
Okay.
parking required for the existing structure. And that's consistent with what was in Mr. Cutler's memo, that 6 parking spaces is required. However, as noted, we are providing 7 on site, and 4 that the applicant has a deeded easement over to utilize on the adjacent property.
Okay. So how many are in the driveway or in the garage?
7.
6? Well, 7 are in the garage.
7 in the garage.
And then adjacent on the surface outside.
There are 4 spaces that are set
Okay.
inside the garage and 4 spaces on an adjoining lot that we have an easement access to. Total of 11.
Looks like one of those spaces will be handicapped, is that correct?
That's correct. In the garage, yes.
And just if you wanted to, if there are any other questions from the board, but as I mentioned, we do also have Mr. Stein here, if you wanted to just, before you open it to the public, have him present a little bit about the initial preliminary engineering.
Sure. Anybody, any more questions for the architect?
No, I'm good.
You have one, Lou?
No, I'm good.
Okay.
Kathy, for the architect, I just wanted to, I assume the brick's going to follow around the back of the building?
That's correct.
Which is going to be facing the water? Is that correct?
Yes, pretty the entire building, the entire 2nd and 3rd floor would be clad with brick. Yes. Mhm.
So similar to the look is on the front.
That's correct. Yes.
Also, are there balconies off the back to overlooking the water?
Yeah, that's a setback in the rear because it's a property line there. So we need to have a setback in order to have, according to the building code, have a 5-foot setback in order to have windows back there. So that entire facade will be brick, those 2nd and 3rd floors of there. Yes.
Okay.
Hey, Mr. Stein, you have a add?
Yes, good evening. Michael Stein with Hudson Engineering. Hope everyone's doing well. The concept of what we're doing for the stormwater for the application is very similar to what we were looking at before. Basically, we're not really changing anything impervious. We're not stepping outside the footprint, but we're going to be taking it directing all the roof leader drains into a mechanical separator, and we're going to connect that into the village's system just down the road. So we had received the comments from Kelly Sessions' office. However, at this point we haven't even started the plan yet. So from here, we're gonna be moving forward to get the plan put together, and I'm sure all their comments will be easily addressed.
I don't think we've seen their comments yet, so go for it. By the time we see it, maybe there will be no comments left, right?
Yes.
Okay. Anybody, any questions for Mr. Stein? No?
Kathy, the stormwater that are hooking up to, do we have a sense of what the village's pipes are they in a decent condition that they're hooking up to?
We'd have
In that
to,
area?
Mr. Stein, do you have any idea?
we would have to find out from Hernani. We did a similar project right down the street at 172. Any investigation he needs won't be a problem.
Okay, that's why I raised the question, because I remembered from the last one down the street. So what's it like in this area?
That I don't have the answer for.
Okay, we I guess talk to Hernani and help us find out.
Yes,
Okay.
not a problem.
Okay, all right, we're at the very beginning of this process, so these are the open questions that just need to be asked and answered.
Yes, understood.
Okay. Anyone else from the board? No? Okay, if any member of the public would like to participate and make some comments on this, even though we're early in the process, you're certainly welcome. You have to raise your hand or email Mr. Cutler. So we'll give this a few minutes to see if anybody is interested in speaking on this application. Mr. Stanziali, I guess you can leave your screen up. We don't see the participants when your screen is up.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. We see, we see a few people, right? I don't know how you got it up, but it's nice. There we go. Now,
Oh, there we go. Okay.
there we are. Now we see more people. Right. Greg, is there anybody queuing up to speak?
No one has emailed me or raised a hand.
I have, this is all new. I have no idea how long we should wait.
This hearing is going to be, oh wait, there is a hand raised. Hold on.
Okay.
Okay.
Is that Ms. Roney?
Yeah. Doreen, did you call in as well? Because I remember we had issues with your.
Okay. We have
So she
one
did
member.
raise her hand, but
Right.
she's not able to speak through.
You can't?
So
Just-
please call in.
Just lit up. But, okay.
With the Doreen, I gave you a number earlier, so just call in that number and I'll unmute you from that number.
Don't send us chat messages during this because I can't do.
Yeah, she can also send a chat. She asked for flood zone compliance.
Or flood zone compliance.
Yeah, it's actually not in the flood zone, but they can talk. They can speak to that if you like, the applicant.
All right. Are we waiting for Doreen?
That's the comment I got from her right now. Is just flood zone compliance. Doreen, if you want to send in more comments through that, feel free.
All right. Can we speak? I'm sorry, because all of this is all new to us. So he's asking about flood zone compliance, and basically what you're saying at this point in time is that the project is not in the flood zone.
Yep.
Is that what you said? Okay.
Yep. And I can actually share my screen to show where it is, if you'd like, in relation.
Right
to
ahead. Technology. We're all learning. Like I said, no okay boomer jokes.
Okay, this is.
Flood zone finder. Who knew there was such a thing?
Ah.
This is the flood zone boundary right here, and this is the corner of the building right there. So it's right outside of the flood zone.
Right outside the flood zone. Okay.
That's the existing building or the proposed building?
It's both because they're building atop the existing building.
Same
Existing.
footprint, no changes.
The existing
footprint.
building is staying.
Same footprint though.
Same
Overall.
footprint.
Mhm.
Okay.
Okay. I hope that answers your question, Doreen. Is there anyone else that's raising their hand to speak? Or email or call in?
She said, thank you for the graphic.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. Thank you.
She said, thank you for the graphic.
Oh, okay, great.
I have no other raised hands at this time.
Okay. Okay, then that's about what we can do tonight.
If I'm sorry, if I could just speak to procedure going forward. Obviously, we understand that we're at the beginning of the process and we have to make supplemental submissions with our landscape plan and the renderings. We do apologize. They came in at a late hour. They became, so we wanted to provide them to the board to the extent we could, but we will certainly submit them well in advance of the April 22nd meeting, so consultants have an opportunity to review them. In the interim, we were wondering about making an application to HCZM to go to them on April 15th for an initial presentation, and just wanted to see if that could be done.
As far as initial presentation, that's usually fine, right? I mean, we have to wait to do the secret until after the lead agency determination is made, but certainly you can do an initial presentation.
Yeah, you go there for preliminary review and they can make any comments to you, to the planning board on seeker issues.
Okay, great.
Okay. All right, we'll leave the public hearing open as this proceeds. And thank you very much.
Thank you all for your time. Be well.
Thank you very much. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Thank you.
Well,
Have a great evening.
Well, thank you. Thank you all. Brings us to the next item on the agenda, which is a new application. 650 Van Rance Place, a special permit. It's an application for a permit to construct a new 2-story single-family residence partially over an existing foundation. This is a new application for the planning board, but it's not really a new application for the village, and it's been to the zoning board already. But Greg, why don't you give us a little bit of the backstory on this project?
You're muted, Greg.
Sorry about that. So this project came in, I don't know the exact date, but it's been well over a year. They applied for a zoning variance, well, several zoning variances to build a single family home in the TOD district. They then let their approvals lapse, their variance approvals lapse, because they weren't able to get a permit within a year. And in the meantime, the Board of Trustees has changed the law as it relates to the TOD zone, thereby requiring a special permit for any infill housing in the TOD zone where one was not required previously. So they are before you for a special permit for housing in the TOD zone. And they've already received, they've already applied for and received new variances since their last ones lapsed. And I think, Frank, you should be able to talk.
Hi, good evening. This is Frank Marcella, architect from Marcella Nogent Architects. And I have Virginia Picciotto also from our firm with me.
Okay, could you hold a minute? Because we do have to open a public hearing.
Sure.
Before you start speaking. And Greg, we also have to declare this for secret as well, correct?
Yep, it would be a type 2 action would be my recommendation.
Okay, so let's, I need a motion then to open the public hearing.
So moved.
Special.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And because it's housing, it falls as a type 2 action. So I need a motion to type this as a type 2 action.
So moved.
Second.
You all jump in? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So
Okay.
give it to me again. Who motioned, who seconded?
John motioned, Cindy seconded, because I saw
Got it.
at the Same time.
Got it.
I can see you guys. Normally I can't see you all.
Okay.
Right. Okay, Mr. Marcella, the public hearing is now open, so why don't you present to us?
Sure, thank you. So the property is it's overlooking Columbus Park. It's a 25 by 100 lot. Narrow frontage. It's in the C1 zone, residential TOD. As Greg mentioned, we filed back, I think in September of 2018. We went to zoning because we needed setback variances on a 25-foot wide lot. It would be impossible to build on. We received side yard variances and FAR variance because what's permitted would be 0.6, which would be 1,500 square feet. We requested to build a single family residence at 2,650 square feet. And we were also over on lot coverage. The existing building is at about 85% lot coverage. Our proposed building, it would be at 57.65. So back in 2018, we did go to zoning. We received the approval. They were very in favor of the project. We then developed the drawings. We went to the Board of Architecture review. We also received an approval. And then, my client was working on funding and pricing, and long story short, we weren't able to secure a building permit within 12 months. So then we recently in January went back to zoning, and we were surprised to hear we needed to come to planning for a special use permit, I guess because there was a law changed regarding single family residential within the TOD district. So we're basically here for this special use permit. Unfortunately, I don't know how to pull up these drawings on this screen, but in a nutshell, so we're also in a flood zone. So basically, the building's design is based on elevating the first floor, creating a FEMA compliant structure, providing parking on the lower level, one level of living space, and then bedrooms on the second floor, and then a roof terrace with a roof garden on the third level. We did submit engineering for review. I think that's being done. That's being reviewed now. What else? I think it's a fairly attractive building. Kind of excited about this. I guess I can answer any questions that the board may have.
Yeah, I have a question, John Verney. I'll actually be able to see this building from my office window across the park at the train station. And you describe it as being out of the flood zone. So it looks like, and I've pulled it up on the agenda and see your rendering. It's a garage on the first floor, living space on what looks like to be the second floor, and then a third floor for bedrooms and a roof terrace above.
Yes, that's right.
And what's the height requirement or height max there, and how high is this?
This is 39 feet tall, and I believe the height requirement is 40.
Okay. Yeah. And it's a single family residence, but it's also adjacent to the apartment building. So it'll be shorter than the apartment building?
Yes, yeah, we did draw the apartment building. I don't have the height dimensions, but it's a good
stories.
It's 5 stories. I mean, it's a good 15 feet taller.
So we actually did look at the height of that building in our review for PLLC, and I believe it was 50 feet.
Okay,
The one.
all right, so it'll be shorter.
Right.
It's an attractive building.
Thank you. It's sort of reminiscent of a brownstone in style and dimension.
Mhm.
Other members of the board have any questions or comments for Mr. Marcelo?
Is
I'm
this
just
something that-
wondering what the, I'm sorry, John. I was just wondering, what are the parameters for the special permit? I mean, what do we have to consider or weigh in order to grant a special permit for this?
That would
I
be
can
a
actually
question.
pull them up on my screen if
Oh.
you'd like. Second.
Is it Article 10 of the zoning code?
No, it's in 34250. I'm pulling it up. Am I sharing? Can you see it?
No.
Not yet.
Okay. There we go.
Okay.
There's really not much there. These are
So it's 342.50.
yeah, and then there's standard. There's also standard considerations. These are the standard ones.
Separate entrance, reserved parking, compatibility of use, building elements. I'm trying to scroll down. It's not my screen.
Yeah, I'm scrolling for you.
That's okay.
It's exempted from the requirement for fair and affordable housing because it's 1 unit. So the TOD, it's for 5 to 10 units.
Okay.
How many square feet is this thing?
It's a little over 2,600 square feet, 2656.
Mhm.
The existing building is 2141, but it's 1 story currently.
Yeah, that building won't be missed.
No, I don't think so.
I think it's been condemned, right? That's what I
Yeah,
said.
yeah.
It's been condemned. It needs to go.
Yeah, it needs to go.
So Greg, the requirements further down in the code have been addressed by the variances granted by the ZBA, right?
That's correct.
Because I just saw quickly the lot coverage is more than the 50% and
Yep.
whatever. So any requirements there have been met through the variances.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Well, we did open a public hearing because special permits require public hearings. So is there anyone who wants to, from the public who wants to raise their hand to comment on this?
Have to open the hearing first.
I think we did that, didn't we?
We
Yes.
did.
Yes, we did. We did that first.
I didn't
I have my
remember.
little checklist of what I have to do.
Kathy's orderly.
So Greg, you're the key master.
Yep. I'm not seeing anything.
Given the circumstances of our meetings, I'm a little reluctant to open and close a public hearing on one night and go ahead and do anything.
Yeah.
So this is probably about as far as we can go tonight.
Okay.
Yeah,
Kathy,
there's no
can I ask
resolution.
Can I ask you a few questions?
Go right ahead.
One was I wanted to, because I don't have a really good picture of the rendering here, but about the landscaping, 2 about the railings. We've had issues with railings as proposed and as constructed in the past. So I want to make sure we're aware of what the railings would be. So I'd like to have those answered.
Sure. So we do have a detail. The railings are proposed to be painted metal. They would be 42 inches high. Basically, run across both the front and the back. There are quite a few railings in the front over the garage door, and then in the smaller areas of the balcony. But I guess your other question was landscaping.
Yes.
So the rear of the property, it isn't a flood zone. I mean, we were proposing to lawn that area. And then on the rooftop, and actually we have a small area in the front of the building where we set the entry stair back. We were able to get an area of about 5 by 10 of planting, which you see a little bit in the rendering. And so there we were planning on putting in some shrubs. And then there's an elevated little planter on your way up to the front door. And then when you get to the roof deck, we were proposing a section of the roof as a green roof.
Yeah, that was my third question, because the special permit talks about green elements. So if you could just discuss a little bit the green elements.
Sure. And then I guess the other green element is the driveway and a portion of the rear. We've introduced permeable pavers.
Good.
Good. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.
There's no landscape plan for the small amount of landscaping that I haven't, we got this package on, digitally, so going through it.
No, there is not a landscape plan.
Do you have a list of the shrubs and the, that you're planting on, somewhere on the plan, on planting in the front? We just want to make sure they're appropriate size for.
Right. I mean, we can definitely do that. We were going to work with the owner on that, but we can definitely select.
Yeah, just to let us know, on our landscape architect consultant can just take a look, just to make sure that
Sure.
appropriate for the size. We do have other developers who come forward and and on something that would grow into a tree. Yay, the right size. So we trust our consultant to work with you.
Sure.
I just want to point out that with the special permit, there's actually no landscape plan requirement. It's only for site plan.
Right. And there's such a small amount here. You can see why it's not something that they need to hire a landscape architect. But just
yeah, I mean, I can
know.
consult. Yeah, we have actually a landscape consultant we use, so it's not really a big deal. They're not.
Just make a note of what you're thinking about putting in.
Sure.
We'll run it by Ms. Oakley.
Okay.
Anybody else? In the meantime, Greg, has anybody raised their hand to speak on this?
No, and let me check my email. I do
And
not
while-
have any emails.
While we're waiting, just so the board's aware, the zoning board variance was included in the application. It's beginning page 27 of 33. So if you look at the application documents, the variance is there. So you'll see how they addressed all the items through the zoning board.
Got it. Thank you. Okay. This doesn't need to go to HCZM or anything, right?
No, it's an action that's exempt.
But it does have to go to BAR, correct?
It does have to go to BAR, yes.
We did go to BAR. We haven't made any changes, so I'm assuming we don't need to go again, but
You went to
When-
VAR the last
We
time?
went May 3rd, 2019.
Okay.
This is a new application? I don't know, Greg, or,
I think it's the
I have to
same from
weigh in.
VAR's perspective, but we'll have to check on when that approval expires because they haven't made any changes since their first submission way back when.
okay.
Other than kind of, like the green building infrastructure, green
All
building elements, things like that. But we'll check that for you.
Okay, so we'll hold the public hearing open to our next meeting. Meanwhile, figure out if they need to go to VAR. And if there's any members of the public then that want to work and get around, and you can draft a resolution for us for our next meeting, Greg?
I can do that, yes.
That sound about right for everybody?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. That's it tonight.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank
Have a
you
good
very
evening.
much.
Take care.
Okay, that leaves us, brings us to the last item on the agenda, which is a work session for the Hampshire Country Club, or I should say Hampshire Recreation LLC. And John?
Yes, I recused for reasons previously
Right.
stated in the record, so I will say goodbye. And thank you, Kathy, for running a good meeting under difficult circumstances, and also Greg for organizing our technology. But well done by both. Thank
I
you.
think we're going to get used to this because I don't think this is the last time we're going to be doing this.
True. Well, good job, guys.
I think we're in for the
Thank
long
you.
haul here. Right. Nice to see you all. I don't know, get to see you at a meeting. Right. We sit next to one another. All right. Thank you, John, as he signs off.
Okay.
And I think I spoke, John's still there. I spoke to everyone. We will need to go into an advice of council session, but we'll do that at the end of the work session. Okay. And again, just to reiterate, this is not a public hearing. This is for the board to work. So we're going to first tackle the latest draft of the FEIS, and we will give Stuart any comments that we have. So, Stuart, you were with us.
I await your comments.
Right. Okay. I have very few comments. So I don't start till page 1-7. I guess it's Roman numeral 1-7. Do you have anything before then?
No, I don't.
Okay. Okay. I noticed we changed the flood elevation projections. So the first full paragraph on 1-7, which is the introduction, we changed the portion of Cooper that would be inundated from 1 foot to 16.5 inches.
Yeah, 16.5 should be.
On the next page, at the bottom of the page, just
Wait a minute. Oh, whoa. Wait.
we're at the bottom of the page, product modifications, the first one, number 1 under that, which is Cooper Avenue. The last sentence, it says 16 inches.
Yeah, it should be 0.5.
We're just looking for consistency. Okay, great. Let's see. And I think the only other I have a couple of comments just based on that change. Somewhere I couldn't tell whether it should have been 16 or it should have been 14. Cindy, I don't have anything till 3, Roman numeral 3-16. You have anything before that?
I have something on page 1-16. This is the dealing just with the language above the facility ownership and maintenance summary. The first edited sentence that starts with the role of the golf club is described below. But then we go on to not have any references to the golf club in the table. So I think that sentence should be removed.
Okay.
Okay. And then that next paragraph that starts proposed ownership, It refers to a lease between Hampshire Recreation LLC. They lease the operation of the golf club to a golf club operator. I don't know if that's a vague reference to the not-for-profit corporation, the membership organization that actually has to operate the golf club and other recreational facilities. It's a little strange to me. So I
think there's a third entity. There's an actual golf course operator. So there's
I think that
LLC, which is the owner and applicant. The Hampshire Club Inc., which is the not-for-profit corporation, which leases land from Hampshire Recreation.
Right.
There's the Hampton, I believe it is, which operates the golf course on behalf of somebody. So this is what we were trying to get at with in the introduction, who all the legal entities were and who all the players were here.
And I think we're really close, but we're not there yet. So
Yeah.
I see no reference here to the not-for-profit corporation, whatever it may be called. So I would like to clarify this so that whatever we say in here is not incorrect. So I think there has to be some reference to the fact that there must be a not-for-profit corporation running the club and the golf course.
Okay, then I think it's best if I reach out to the applicant on that.
To get some clarification as to who the golf club operator is.
Well, you can tell by the 990 submissions.
I'm sorry, Stuart.
Right.
Stuart, what were you?
Well, I think you said golf club operator. What I understand is that there's a not-for-profit entity that you want inserted in here, and we need to understand who they are and what their role is.
They're required by code.
Right.
I actually drafted a quick sentence to maybe clarify that a little bit. And I understand, it's very clear to me that Hampshire Recreation LLC is going to be leasing the property, so they have listed themselves as the main entity to deal with maintenance and would own the property. I mean, that's clear to me. What isn't clear in this paragraph is where the not-for-profit required by the village zoning code fits into this entity table. So if reaching out to the applicant is the best way to go, I'm fine with that.
What's your sentence? And let's, why don't we get your sentence and then let's talk about that.
Okay. Mamaroneck Village Code requires the golf course and other club facilities be organized and operated as an independent, not-for-profit corporation. No reference is included in the table below as to the club's role in the maintenance of the facility.
I think that's good up until the end, in which we might as well try to get it clarified.
Well, that's fine, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
That's cool. So give me the language again, though, please.
Okay. Mamaroneck Village Code requires that the golf course and other club facilities be organized and operated as an independent, not-for-profit corporation.
Okay, got it. I will call the applicant.
Okay. And then my next comment was on I-27.
Okay.
The last paragraph, 2/3 of the way down, the sentence starts, as such, the project would have virtually no impact on Cooper Avenue or Old Boston Post Road. I would either strike the sentence or add to it and say, except in emergency or flood events.
I'd rather add the add.
Okay. So it would have no impact except in a flood.
Right, as discussed further, and then reference the where it's discussed.
Yep. And then on I-29,
Okay.
at the bottom of that page, we're talking about Cooper being inundated with 1 foot of water. Is this
No,
a
that's
spot
I got
that's
changed.
a miss. Yep. We gotta make
we
that.
need to deal with that other
Yep.
actual inches language?
Yep.
Okay.
I caught all of those. I missed that one.
I got to get you somewhere. Okay, that was really what I had here.
Section 1. Introduction and description. Okay. That's to section 3.
Yep.
Okay. I don't have anything to 16.
What page, John?
3:16, but if there's something before then.
Okay.
Okay, the second paragraph from the bottom. And this is what we were just discussing with the table in the introduction, based on our last meeting, and the applicant actually spoke to us at the last meeting that the applicant, as owner of the property, is taking the ultimate legal responsibility for the maintenance of everything. So we struck out the club basically from everywhere because the club has no legal responsibility according to the applicant. So here we're saying the club again. You know,
Can do a global on that.
we have to, you know, but the club has legal responsibility for operating the golf club and the clubhouse and things like that. So we just have to have consistency and clarity. That's all.
Can I digress for just a second and ask Mr. Spolzino a question about this? Assuming that this would be a long-term lease between the not-for-profit club and Hampshire Recreation LLC, don't they sort of step into the shoes of the responsibilities of the landowners?
That would be a function of the terms of the lease.
Right, but I mean, generally, with a really long-term lease, you're responsible, you know, for everything. And I know it would then be an internal dispute. So well, whatever. It's just a little strange if it's in a long-term lease situation, I would think. So, okay.
Okay. Next.
If you take a look at section 3:17, it mentions the club is managed by Hampton Golf Clubs. Is that the name we're looking for?
That's, yeah, that's.
No, that's a management firm.
That's a
That's not the
management company.
not-for-profit.
Okay.
No, that's
gotcha.
the right, that's the third entity. There's the operator, and now the operator, right?
Yeah.
And I'm assuming they're only going to be managed by Hampton Golf Clubs for as long as they have a contract with them. They can substitute another management,
Absolutely.
but the not-for-profit has to stay.
Right.
So it should be named in somewhere in there.
Well, I think that's what we just talked about, that we're going to try and get more clarity on the not-for-profit.
Okay. I don't have anything till 3:89. And Stuart, you threw a little curveball to us by reorganizing the document.
Yeah, I know, it makes it a little harder to follow, I realize that.
Sections that used to be.
But you've been asking me to do that.
Are now subsections. Right. So I'm assuming, because we have still some issues as far as like on 89.
Yeah, I see, we got a
It
formatting.
used to be a section, now it's a subsection, so we just need to go through and scrub out and make sure that we're all uniform with the headings and stuff like that. Okay. I don't have anything till 396, and again, it's the same issue about referring to the club being responsible for the maintenance of the stormwater runoff, or, no, this is so that the homeowners association stormwater can run through the club property. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, fifth paragraph down, second line.
Wait a minute, I'm sorry, 396.
390. If there needs to be an agreement, I'm not, legally, who does the agreement have to be with?
Right, wouldn't the agreement be with the landowner, not the club?
Right. And that same comment shows up in response E10 on 399. Does the agreement have to be with the applicant and the homeowners association?
We're on 399?
Uh,
Got it, I found it, never mind.
Response to E10.
Got it. Okay.
And on 3106, top of the page, first paragraph, which is a partial paragraph. The bottom of that paragraph, we're talking about how the club is responsible for maintenance of the drainage ditches, but the chart says that the applicant is responsible. And I don't know with whom the town has some agreements, legal agreements with regards to some of the ditches, the drainage, whether they have it with the corporate entity that's the club or the corporate entity that's the applicant.
Which response are you in?
Say it again.
I'm sorry, which response are you in?
I'm on the top of page 3-106. The bottom of the response F2.
Bottom of F which?
F2.
The first paragraph.
Yeah, my pagination seems to be a little bit different than yours for some
Okay.
reason.
Sorry, so we
No, don't be
use
sorry. I
page
don't know.
numbers anymore.
Yeah, no,
I
I
mean, they
don't
gotta
know.
be
what-
approximate, right? So the bottom of F2, right above comment F3.
Yeah.
The club is referenced again. At this point in the process, we should know.
Yeah, it's response F2.
I got it. Okay, thank you.
Okay, let's see. Response G1, for us, it's 3115.
Okay.
Under the future sea rise impact on access, that's 3116 for us.
You're gonna have to start giving me comment numbers. I'm sorry, because my pagination.
Comment response G1.
Okay.
It has several subsections. I'm on subsection future sea rise impact on access.
Got it.
The second paragraph, which was just added in this version, again, we have 14 and a half inches of water. And I think the 50th percentile is 16 and a half inches of water that we changed in the previous section of the document.
Yeah, let me double check it.
Okay.
Okay.
Response G33 on our document is 3143, page 3143.
Gets me in the ballpark anyway.
I'm sorry.
Kathy, you have the same inches error on 3-119, which is comment G4. It says flood height is 13.
19.
What response?
G5,
G4
Response
maybe G5 too?
and
Oh, no,
G5.
G4 is correct. That's the FEMA suggested floodplain.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Right. It's the current FEMA.
Yeah,
What
this is
changed was the projected for the future with climate change. Okay, where was I? 33. Same issue. We're referencing the club.
I'm sorry, one second, you gotta slow down for me. Sorry.
G33.
G33.
Right.
Okay.
We're talking about the tidal gates being maintained by the club.
Okay.
And I have no other comments. So Cindy,
No, I don't either.
that's it. Anybody else have any other comments on this version?
I think Bob had one suggestion.
Well, that's, let me get what I said. That's up to the board. If the board wants to address the comment that was submitted by Mr. Cass about the language of section 6.0 regarding ownership of the roads.
That's section 6.0 of what document, Bob?
It would be page, this would be page 115.
Okay,
Actually, probably it's the next page.
because I don't see it there.
It's actually page 117, sorry. Bob is suggesting an edit to page 117, the addition of a sentence. One from the end that would say, neighbors who own portions of those roads assert that the applicant does not have the right to use the private roads for this proposed project.
I like that sentence. I'm fine with that sentence, but I would delete the sentence that follows it. We're not getting involved in this. So based on the record before the planning board, that does not appear to be the case. I don't think we need to make that that observation.
I'm fine with that.
I'm fine with it. Fine with that.
Okay.
Okay.
What else on this?
Bob, do you have anything else for us?
I don't have anything else.
Okay, I think.
So let me suggest that I need to clarify the NFP entity. And then I will put this together as a final version for you. We have to fill in all the section references, put together the FEIS appendices, have a couple of adds to it. I need to work with the applicant to get those files and assemble everything. So let me work to assemble everything and then I can give it to you. And then I would assume at your next meeting, you can adopt it.
That would be April 22nd. We don't have an early April meeting because of Passover next month. So our next scheduled meeting, regular scheduled meeting is the 22nd.
Right.
Okay, so we're looking for then a final draft of the final FEIS, April 22nd.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. That takes us into the second part of this work session. We received a memo from Mr. Messenger on the 18th of March, laying out the facts for each one of the areas of concern. And tonight our goal is to get through this as much as possible. What time is it? It's 8:18. We keep going. We're going to start with 1 and go all the way through to the end, hopefully, which will bring us to the alternatives, which is 18.
Chair, if I may interrupt, we did reserve March 30th as a possible.
We know that.
Okay.
We know that. We
just wanted to make sure.
We, among ourselves, we are holding 2 dates in case we need them. They have not been noticed publicly yet.
No.
So we're going to see if we need them at the end of this meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So, Mr. Messenger, is there anything, or Mr. Sposino, that you want to say before we start this process?
Not for me. Dive right in.
Yeah. So, what I've tried to do here is put down what I think are the relevant facts. What you need to tell me is, and you don't need to write the finding, you don't need to draft the finding, but you need to tell me as a board what you think you want the conclusion to be.
Okay.
And so some of this is table setting, and I think you folks know the record extremely well by now because you've been working at this, pretty diligently for quite a long time now. So I just tried to organize it by topic. I've tried to indicate what I think the decisions you need to make are, so that I have the direction to finish writing findings. So I would say to dive in with land use and zoning and public policy. The key things really, I think, here relate to environmental findings that relate to consistency with the PRD. The open space is one, and we've talked about that a lot. The recreational opportunities, the environmental protection, and whether the floodplain is a limitation to development that should be taken into account when you consider density on the project. I think those all relate to the PRD and density calculation.
Right. Okay. Well, I think you laid it out very well for us, and that's a good summary for people who are watching who may not have the document in front of them. The project is going to convert 30.6 acres to shared open space. But as we've pointed out before, the open space is divided into 8 distinct areas. They're disconnected. They provide no active recreation or make it difficult for even passive recreation other than bird watching from your back deck. And some can't even be accessed unless they walk across the golf course, which is closed to non-members. I think that I'll express my opinion. I don't think we meet the definition of the intent or the letter of the law for the planned residential district. Anybody else want to jump in?
Yeah, I would say that the project's open space is not consistent with the purpose of the PRD because of the disconnected, sometimes mere, strips of open space that's being counted in that 30.6 acres. I think that's not really within the spirit, Kathy, as you said, of enhancing or providing shared open space.
Many of it is also the embankments and platforms that are being built to raise up the roadways and the houses.
Which would not be
a lot
usable.
Of snow, unless there's a lot of snow, everybody can go sledding. There's not a lot of things that can be done with the slopes. Anybody on the board have a opinion or wants to chime in? Richard?
Well, I think you have to remember that it is open space only because there's no building on top of it. The fact is it's not usable and it's not public open space. And it at best it serves the people that buy the houses.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
I have to agree with Cindy. Hello?
Okay. Okay. I think
Lou, what did you have?
he agrees with you, Cindy.
Okay.
Look, the project is artificial, and above all, it's not safe. It's artificial because I do agree. These sloping mounds that people will not be able to use. Only certain people will go there. And then I got the whole safety issue and the whole 1 foot of water on Cooper Road, and that to me, it's just a big accident, waiting to happen. So
We'll get to that point. I think the one thing that I learned in taking this on is that 100 years ago, this was a salt marsh. This whole property was a salt marsh. There were water courses, the end of a watershed, delivering water to Long Island Sound. 100 years ago, environmental protections in place and people didn't know any better and they filled in portions of it to make a golf course. You know what happens with fill in areas like this, Mother Nature's always trying to reclaim them. There are inherent flaws in this site as it is a floodplain and it requires a lot of work in order to make it used for residential purposes to make it safe. So we're going to get to that safety in a minute. I think that's section 1. Stuart, you have what you need?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Number 2 is community character and visual resource.
Wait.
No.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm skipping.
Yep. I'd like you to look at sub.
That's right. I was doing the segue into the floodplain and I skipped right over it. Okay. Need to determine if the floodplain is an environmental limitation that should be subtracted from the developable area, thus reducing the allowable density. Anybody want to start on that one?
Well, do we have to hit the rest of the
Yeah, I'd like you to-
bullets about the, like, for example, increasing recreational opportunities consistent with the PRD?
I thought you should talk about that and the PRD purpose of promoting environmental protection before you get to the
okay.
No, it does neither.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't see any increased recreational.
There's nothing to increase recreational activities. In fact, it diminishes the current recreational activities on the place.
Yeah, which again is totally private.
Right.
It's private now, but when you go from a large golf course to a small golf course, that's not increasing recreational opportunities as far as I'm concerned.
No, you're right.
And there are people who walk through it, walk through the site. I think generations of Mamaroneck kids have sledded on the area, even though they're probably not supposed to.
Yeah, I'm not sure that trespassers on private property are really going to be a recreational opportunity, but I see no increase in recreational opportunities.
I don't either. I agree. I don't see any.
No, I agree.
Okay.
And then are we promoting environmental protection? Well, by having strips of land and berms that are vegetated and left untouched, I guess you could.
By bringing in hundreds of yards of new soil, and I don't think so.
Yeah, dumping more dirt in a critical environmental area certainly is not good.
I mean, I suppose you could make the argument that there will be some betterment of the wetlands and the areas surrounding the ponds and the water bodies on the site. I think, to take out invasive species and to put in more appropriate species could be something good. But taking down mature trees and planting smaller ones. I mean, this is very vague in terms of promoting environmental protection. I don't see any type of real green infrastructure with the buildings. I mean, I think there's more that could be done, but I just don't see it.
Okay.
I think I'm in agreement with you.
Okay.
I don't see it either. Okay. And then with regards to the lot count and the floodplain, now the floodplain is how many acres?
Well, most of the site is in the floodplain.
Most of the site is in the floodplain.
Most of the site is in the floodplain. The issue is whether it's an environmental limitation. Remember, your ordinance basically says you can subtract environmental limitations, but it doesn't define them. Steep slopes might be an environmental limitation, wetlands an environmental limitation. But it's really going to be, it's your decision whether the floodplain is a significant environmental limitation that ought to be subtracted from the developable area of the site.
And does that how does that intersect with the designation of a critical environmental area?
In this context, it does not. The critical environment, I mean, we'll get to the critical environmental finding later, but this is, I think, a finding specific to density because it's going to take you to alternatives later.
I mean, this is also is part of the discussion that we're going to have on item number 7, which is floodplains.
Well,
Everything is intersecting here, so.
I think we need some legal clarification, Bob. Who's in charge here? State law, the town law? What's the deal?
Bob gave us his opinion.
In terms of
Yeah.
what? In terms of lot count?
Yeah,
I gave you that months ago.
Yeah.
There's and if you look at the language that we've added, I think it's in this document as well.
It is. It's right here on C in this document. The question is, for each of those calculations, and I'm not sure we're going to do the math here tonight, we're allowed to subtract some land if if we determine there is an environmental limitation.
I mean, the substance of my opinion on that is that you essentially have to comply with both, but that they're probably both the same. So at the end of the day, as a practical matter, you're going to decide whether these environmental issues require deducting the areas from lot count.
Well, I personally think floodplain is a significant environmental limitation.
Yeah, I would agree with that, but are we coming up with a number now?
No.
In the findings? No. Okay.
No, we just have to determine if it's a significant environmental limitation.
yes.
Correct.
Are we in agreement on that? I think we may be.
Yes?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Stuart, you have what you need?
I do,
Okay. I can move on to section 2.
please.
Character and visual resources. The record shows that the lot and house sizes are consistent with the surrounding neighborhoods. It's visible from the immediately surrounding streets, and we don't have record of any significant impacts to community character. Does everyone agree with that?
Yes.
I agree. Lou?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, community character, I don't know. It's changing an open recreational space to a residential block.
But the houses are going to be consistent with that neighborhood. You know, they're going to be, I think, you know, they're visually attractive.
yes.
They're, you know, they fit
But
that.
they're not consistent with the land use.
I don't know that, Stuart, is that?
Yeah, but that's section number 1, and we already just passed section number 1, land use. Now we're on just visual resources.
Oh, visually it's nothing, yeah.
So I think that the houses that are being proposed would fit in with the Orienta neighborhood.
That's the sort of the intent of this finding.
Okay.
You know, it's
Okay.
Right.
Geology, soils and steep slopes. We're relocating approximately 217,000 cubic yards of soil and importing another 81, almost 82,000 cubic yards of fill. So we will discuss that in the section where that is, that's more detailed. Soil
Well,
contamination,
yeah, and
environmental contamination. So as far as geology, there's not.
and the mitigation of those would be discussed in that part as well, because
Correct.
there are significant mitigation steps outlined. Right.
Right. So in this particular section, there's not a lot to talk about. Everyone agree?
Yeah.
Groundwater resources. Groundwater is located at shallow depths across the project site, but the proposed action calls for so much soil to be piled on top of the existing land?
Well, that's not exactly it. It's, but they
In
have
many of
agreed
places,
There's no interaction with the
there's
ground.
no interaction with groundwater. And that's what the record shows, and that's what all of the consultant reports show, correct?
Yeah, I will say the opponents disagree with that. We look at it and we think it's accurate with the information that's there. If they, if you run into groundwater in a construction project, then, there's pretty standard methods for dewatering it. The groundwater itself is not contaminated.
Okay. All right, everybody good with no significant finding for groundwater?
Yes.
Yes.
Number 5, surface water courses and wetlands. Obviously, the wetlands that were on the property were controlled and contained into man-made ponds associated with the golf course. They're currently of low quality. The applicant is proposing more plantings around the wetlands and buffer plantings. A little bit of filling of some drainage ditches, and new drainage ditches as part of the stormwater plan that requires a permit. So didn't seem like there's any major significant finding with courses, water courses. And
I think you'd find that the wetlands would be improved to some extent by the project because of the proposed buffer plantings.
right. So that would be the conclusion here. Everyone agree with that?
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Stormwater management, and we lost Lou. Lou, if you're there, you're not on the screen anymore. You seem to be fading. Stormwater management. I thought you slid down. A SWIP has been prepared. And usually when there's a SWIP and water treatment, water runoff improves because of that action. So we have no significant impacts identified, negative impacts identified with stormwater management in the FEIS. Everyone in agreement?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Number 7, issue number 7 is floodplains, and there's multiple areas here to discuss. So I'll take a deep breath.
Well,
Stuart, jump in and help us with this, but the majority of the site is in a floodplain, a former salt marsh. So
I think you can boil it down to the issues that you've talked about at length, which primarily are the Cooper Avenue access issue.
correct.
I think you've all expressed quite a bit of concern with that. And so you need to decide what your finding is. And then there's a series of, I think you should address whether the project is consistent with the purposes and objectives of the village floodplain regulations, and I spelled those out for you. And I think that you need to address whether the project qualified for a variance. And you would note that the applicant's study doesn't show the floodwaters rising on other properties as a result, but you have the Cooper issue, you have the purpose and intent that you ought to wrestle with, and you have the criteria for the variance. So I think it boils down to those 3 things.
well, and it's not just the Cooper Avenue issue. Cooper Avenue wouldn't be necessary if Cove Road and Eagle Knolls didn't flood off-site.
Right.
Cooper is sort of the egress of last resort, or where the rescuers would come in when the other 2 areas are flooded. So I suspect we all feel the same way about safe access during the 100-year tidal flood, taking into account future sea level rise. That's a major concern.
And it's not wide enough to
Right. And if one car gets stuck there on the way out,
forget it.
everybody's backed up behind them. Nobody's going to be able to come in or go out. So the fact that Cooper Avenue would be underwater, I think is a major problem. And
As well as the other roads.
right, maybe the first responders have vehicles that are high enough to get through some of the water if it's lower, but it doesn't mean the ordinary person who's trying to get out of there does. So.
Well, it certainly would not promote public health, safety, and general welfare and minimize public and private losses.
Agreed.
So
I think,
if
I
that's
think
the
that's pretty,
finding,
it's
then I
it's
think
pretty
that
obvious.
if that's the finding, and I've heard you guys be saying that for a while, and I think you're confirming it tonight,
Right.
then that I think follows through on the purpose and objectives and the variance criteria.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that last part?
Well, I mean, I think if that's the key finding, that the project simply doesn't provide safe access
Correct.
in the future sea level rise condition, then that I think we don't have to go through every purpose and objective. We don't have to go through every variance criteria. I think it then follows that the project is not going to be consistent with those. We can go through them if you want, but I think that cuts to the chase.
Right. I think that's one thing in reading through this, the floodplain regulations are, pretty strict, and I think we don't meet them. And then, we had to learn about the variance conditions because that doesn't often come up. And the variance conditions really are talking about structures and improvements on 1/2 acre lots or less. And this is substantially more than that. Clearly, the intent for variances was not really intended for such a huge, large project.
Well, and that ties into your finding about whether the floodplain is a limitation to development. Right.
Yeah, right, okay.
Well, so in item N, where the conditions for the variances, I sort of earmarked 4 of them that I thought were a particular problem, which is B, danger to life and property due to flooding. H, the relationship of the proposed use to the comprehensive plan and floodplain management of the area. I, the safety of access to the property in times of flood for ordinary and emergency vehicles. And then L, the costs of providing governmental services during and after flood conditions, including search and rescue.
Okay.
That's J.
Is it J?
Yeah.
Okay. Yep. Got it. Yep.
It just looks funny. It's a J. Right. It's the font.
Oh, I was on the next page in L.
Oh, you're on the next page. You're on L. Oh, okay.
I really was on L.
Okay.
But I like J.
You're right.
J and L kind of go together.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're kind of redundant.
All right. Well, we've obviously been at this long enough that we don't really need much discussion about it.
Yeah, and I think you guys have talked about this at length in prior meetings.
We've asked a lot of questions about this, and
I think we have a pretty
that
detailed
change anything. Okay, on to item 8, water supply, no significant issues. Westchester Joint Waterworks would be on the case. Sanitary sewage, everybody's in agreement. I don't want to go too fast
No, we're good.
Okay, sanitary sewage, no significant issues with respect to treatment. There are some options that were given. The village engineer recommended one use. The applicant looked at 3 alternatives. Do we need to determine whether we need to allow further consultation between the engineer and the applicant? I guess when we get to alternatives, we could certainly talk about that.
Well, I would do it here in this finding.
Okay.
I mean, they're all feasible, and ultimately, I think what you would find, I would suggest that what you would find is that the applicant would do whatever the village engineer tells him to do.
Yeah, that's whatever's acceptable to the village.
Yep.
Yeah, and the County Department of Health, I presume.
Right. Well, there's codes that have.
Yeah, although this is the issue here is not the county, it's really the village. Hernani has a desired solution, which isn't the applicant's desired solution. But at the end of the day, they both work.
Okay.
Okay, number 9, solid waste. No significant issues with removing solid waste. Number 10, vegetation and wildlife. So let's see what the findings are. There's 816 trees on the site over 8 inches in diameter, and the proposed plan is to remove 432 of them, mostly mature trees. replace them with smaller trees that would mature in between 20 and 40 years by different estimates, and would be different species and cultivars, which may or may not have the same habitat value, depending on how you define and look at habitat. Regional context, local context. And yes, we live in a region, we live in the world as we're finding now with coronavirus, but we also live in the village of Mamaroneck, and we live in neighborhoods, and we are tasked with protecting the village of Mamaroneck. That's what the Village of Mamaroneck Planning Board does. So we are now to determine whether the impacts to vegetation and wildlife have been adequately mitigated or whether there are significant unmitigated impacts.
For me, the loss of half the good trees is a killer right there.
I don't think it can be mitigated, maybe in 40 years, but.
Well, that would make me about 120 years old. So.
Don't catch coronavirus and you may make it.
I'm trying, kid, I'm trying.
If I could just make a quick comment to Stuart, just so you know, there's 2 number 9s. So you just gotta
Yeah, I saw that. When I was following along in my book, I went, wait a minute, I lost my numbering.
Wait a minute, 2 number 9?
You guys don't have to worry about it.
Don't worry about it. It's not a big deal.
Oh, all right. Okay.
Yeah, there are 2 number 9s, but that's okay. Yeah, I agree with Richard. I think the removal of such mature trees,
in such value.
even if we were optimistic and they could grow, the replacement trees would grow within 20 years. It's not going to grow to what's there now that's 100 years old, and you can't, waiting that long to me is still an unmitigated impact.
Okay, I agree. Lou? Did we lose Lou?
Yes, I agree with Richard. I want to be 100.
Okay.
120 years old.
Okay. Okay, so that brings us to the next item, which is critical environmental area.
Yes.
And the fact that this is designated a critical environmental area and it's adjacent to the Homick Salt Marsh. Obviously, it probably was at one point part of what is now called the Homick Salt Marsh. And our job here is to make findings with respect to the characteristics. We have 5 characteristics, so we're looking at the floodplain and open space characteristics are most important with our findings to the.
And so since you've already said what you want to find with respect to that, then that carries through to the C.
Carries to this area as well. Okay. Moving right along, number 12, traffic, transit, and pedestrians. So the first, go ahead.
I was just going to say, and I guess we need to evaluate this during construction as well as post-construction phase. They're sort of 2 different things.
Right, and so from an operations phase, I think the record shows that they're not significant impacts. So the findings that I'm having you focus on here are the construction impacts, because that's really where the bulk of the discussion was.
Right, where we have
Yeah.
construction lasting several years. In the first phase of it, where we've got a truck coming in basically every 5 to 7 minutes coming and going.
The timeline for the project was kind of vague or unanswered because it's tied into the rate of sales of the property.
That's why we changed the document to say a minimum of 6 to 7 years.
I'm wondering if we shouldn't somehow work that in, because there's a great degree of uncertainty of the length and depth of the problem over time.
Or it could stop and then start up again, and it could be.
Or it could last 20 years.
Oh, I hope not. I think everybody hopes not. I mean, would it make a difference to our findings?
No, I would. I mean, the key answer is impact, and is it tied in some way to the nature of the project, which requires a whole lot of fill in the floodplain? To me, that's really, there's two components. One is the length of the time of construction, which I think Richard has pointed out, and I've added a note about it. They've proposed various mitigation measures, which I've spelled out to you here, or laid out here. And so what you need to find is, are those mitigation measures sufficient for the period of construction where the most of the, or at least the most significant impact is the 9 months in which the development platform is being built.
Well, that you can't argue with. That's true.
Yeah, but what are we arguing here? Are we arguing the fact that there's going to be a major disruption to that area at Mamaroneck? Of course there will be, for a long time. And it's not going to be the amount of work that they are producing in those documents. It's going to be 10 times worse. So
the record doesn't show that, but I think that
I don't care what the
experience tells us things are always worse than we think they're going to be.
Well, any kind of construction is going to cause disruption, and I don't know that, for a big project, I don't think this is any more disruption than would be. And I think there's a fairly decent mitigation plan. I don't know that this is, such it's going to be an impact, but it's
but they do have a mitigation plan. That's
right.
Right. They're going to avoid school opening and closing times, but other parts of the day there's going to be a steady stream of large trucks.
My question is
going into the site.
But Kathy, my question is, who is going to make sure that all these mitigation plans are being followed? Who does that?
Well, you guys could require an environmental monitor who would monitor such things.
That would all be built into the approval,
right?
All those kinds of conditions. And as Stuart said, an environmental monitor would be appropriate to make sure they happen.
Which, given the proximity of the site to the school, and there's not a lot of room down there to begin with. The Post Road intersection and Homix Road, it's just not a huge lot of space. There's going to be trucks backed up trying to get into the site, out onto Eagle Knolls, down to Homix, and at some time maybe even out to Boston Post Road. But as things go, this is probably not the worst thing that is a part of this project. And the applicant has proposed some mitigation. So I'm not sure whether this is significant or not.
I wouldn't say that it was.
I think it's an enormous amount of traffic, and it remains to be seen what's going to happen if this went forward at this scale. But I don't know. This one isn't a deal breaker for me. Anybody else? Richard, do you have?
No, I agree.
Yeah. I mean,
it's a big mitigation plan, but we can't find that it's a significant impact that's unmitigated, but it's, to me, it's only partially mitigated because you can't make the problem go away.
No. And we're not spreading it out over more time. We're actually compressing it into less time on a given day.
And either way, it's problematic.
Right.
Okay.
You can't start earlier in the morning because that's against the village code.
Yeah. I think I got the gist of it. Let me take a stab at that one. We'll probably have to wordsmith this one a bit.
Okay. Community demographics, facilities, and services. This is talking about youth sports, but most primarily the school district. And the record shows, the analyses in the record shows that there is no significant adverse impact on the schools as far as the number of children. The applicant argues that the tax revenue is more than enough to meet the capital needs of the school district. Now, what the school district would do with additional capital revenue, build a new school, build trailers to accommodate the kids, I guess that's up to them. You'd have to find some space. Some of the schools are landlocked. This would impact comics, the high school and central school, correct? Am I correct, Cindy? You know that school district better than me.
Yes, it would. I
I
believe
live
it.
in right
I
now.
believe. I believe.
Right. So central school have some land, I guess, if they wanted to put trailers or annex buildings up, comics. I don't know how much land they have at this point in time as they approach upon the marsh. And the high school certainly has done a big, done a big project. I don't know if they need to have any more space to do more, but.
I can't see that this is it's not ideal for the school, but it is what it is.
Right.
I want to go back to C for a second, where it says the project would not have a significant impact on the operations of fire, police, or EMS. I agree, but on the day-to-day resources, it could have an impact on emergency resources.
Oh,
During the flood event.
right,
Yes.
right, or any other emergency that might be there. Yes, because there's not that many ways in and out, right?
But you can get out if the roads aren't flooded. So if
Yeah,
it's
if
a
the roads
gas
aren't
leak or something, it's different.
Right.
All those providers basically said they could meet the project's needs. So, but I think we ought to make that point again about the
Their day-to-day operations are fine. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Sorry, I skipped that one.
That's okay.
Just the potential of adding more customers for emergency.
They said that was okay.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, so we're talking about a minor impact on public recreational facilities, no significant impact on the day-to-day operations and resources of our emergency responders, but an impact if there's a flood event.
Yeah.
And no significant
Kathy, could I
impact on the school.
just comment on A and B? Of course, there's no impact because the site that's in question is private property. So I don't know, should this even be in here?
Well,
it relates to the kids that come
The
from
kids
the
that
project.
join the Little League and the Soccer League and the Lacrosse League, and they're going to consume. I mean, the leagues don't have enough field space as it is.
Yeah, but I remember the responses from those leagues, and it really didn't stress the huge addition number of kids.
Well, that's why it would be a minor.
That's why it would be. That's why
They
there's no
just made the
significant
point that it
impact.
doesn't add to the public recreation.
No, I mean, if they added a field here somewhere that the public could use, that might be
Well,
recreation.
that's kind of a backhanded way to mention it.
Right. Okay. All right, are we good on 12?
Yeah.
13, fiscal and economic conditions. Obviously, one of the big selling points of this project is additional tax revenue to all jurisdictions. And that there's more to life than money, as we're finding out as economy shuts down and we're talking about killing old people. But or not killing them, we're letting them die.
Greg.
I'm sorry, Greg. Yeah, Greg, our young person here. I'm in that category.
Hey, he is the only one who can do the technology.
Yeah, right. I know we need him. Okay, so we're talking about no adverse impact for the tax impact, and we're talking about temporary jobs, construction spending, long-term spending, hopefully in the community and not online on Amazon from the residents, all of which are positive impacts. Anybody have any disagree?
No, that's good. That's
Well,
good.
just that there's no guarantee that those jobs will directly affect Mamaroneck residents.
That's true.
So maybe there should be some.
But we're talking the regional, I mean, we are part.
Even regional.
Right.
If you look at the construction up on Old Post Road in Rye,
Mhm.
the workers' license plates are from all over.
I know, but as Stuart's pointed out to me when I mentioned that to him, that there is a shortage of construction workers in the New York metropolitan area, and they actually come from all over, and they actually stay in hotels during the week or motels during the week and go home on the weekends. So they have to eat, they have to stay. So who knows? Who knows? Let's just assume that there'll be something. People have to buy gas for their cars and stuff like that. 14, historic and cultural resources. No significant impacts.
Right.
Environmental contamination. Okay. Number 15. There are low levels of environmental contamination consistent with the use as a golf course. The DEC has reviewed the applicant's plan and found that they meet conditional exemption requirements with regards to contamination. The applicant proposes to import only clean soils and has put in mitigation that there would be a testing and reporting program for such. And they developed a construction work plan that includes best practices for managing the soils. So I think with the mitigation, there's no significant impact for this particular issue.
I agree.
Anyone else agree, disagree? Everybody good?
Yes.
Okay, 16 is noise. So the first fact from the record that Stuart included in this memo is that there's a temporary construction noise that would exceed ambient levels at some nearby residents by more than 10 decibels. And that by standards is considered significant increase?
Yeah, by the DEC's guidelines, yes.
The DEC guidelines. Okay.
And Stuart, is this significant increase taking into account the mitigation steps?
Well, no, and I think I didn't do a good job of explaining that in this memo. So the applicant is proposing, quite extensive mitigation measures, and I think they're the appropriate mitigations for this particular issue.
Yeah, there's going to be noise.
Yeah, there's going to be noise in construction.
And that noise is going to be there for 6 to 7 years.
Yeah, but.
Or the duration of the construction.
Right, but I mean, these are the appropriate mitigation measures for this kind of construction. Things like 7, which is an acoustic enclosure, those things actually work really well.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to hear it. I mean, when the equipment's out there going, you're going to hear it. There's no question about that.
But they're only they're phasing it, so they're building in certain areas all at the same time. So yes, it will be intense in one area for the residences in that area, but then it moves on to the next phase a couple years later.
Correct.
Right?
Correct. Yeah.
So as ugly as it might be for the immediate neighbors, I don't think it's a significant unmitigated adverse impact.
I mean, it's, SEQR doesn't say that there should be no impact. The idea is to mitigate to the maximum extent practicable. And I think the things they're proposing here are what one would typically propose in a construction project.
So we find the mitigation sufficient that it's not a significant adverse impact. Is that correct?
I think the language that I'm going to suggest that we use is it's a short-term impact. Now, here short-term might be 6 or 7 years or longer, but at the end of the day, it's temporary. They're proposing appropriate mitigation measures, and yes, there will be an impact at times.
Okay. Everyone in agreement with that?
Yes.
Yes.
17 is air quality. So there's going to be a community air monitoring program put in place, and wetting dry soils to make sure there's no blowing soils. So that seems to be, that's the record, and it's probably adequate to mitigate any impacts from any blowing soils, and there's been no other air quality issues that were identified in the record. Is that correct, everyone?
Yes.
Which brings us to alternatives. Now, we had quite a number of alternatives, and then we had some sub-alternatives presented to us. Given the nature and the inherent flaws with the site of it being a floodplain, pretty much all of the alternatives, A through the proposed action, except for the no action alternative, which is alternative A, keeping things the way they are, require the development of platforms to bring everything up above the floodplain and the import of fill to do all that, or the moving around of soil within the site in the fill alternatives.
Well, there is a no-fill alternative, though.
Correct, that's what I just said. Right?
Okay, I thought you said no action alternative.
No. There's no action. And then there's some lower density, which requires the same platforms because we have to bring everything up above. And then no fill, they're going to build the platforms, but it's relocation of soils from within the site to build the platforms. Because every option until you get to alternative G requires the platforms for the roads, the utilities, and the homes. Is that correct?
Right. But that's right. And so I think to be consistent, if your earlier finding is that the floodplain is a limitation on development, then it would follow that the acceptable alternative or alternatives would be those that don't involve filling in the floodplain.
But then I think we need to go one step further because, again, how do people leave the site in a flood event? You still have the Cooper problem. You still have the overtopping of Eagle Knolls and Cove Road. I still don't see a way for maybe a lesser number of individuals. Maybe it's only 90 or 100, but how do they leave?
Well, you've identified that as a significant impact. If somebody wanted to come forward with another project, they'd have to address those things.
Right.
Maybe they'd raise the roads.
I mean, I was kind of stymied by these alternatives because they were all so similar to the proposed action, and there weren't enough differences for us to, try to propose an alternative that would work, that we could work with. I mean, is there any way to build homes on the site without platforms? And somewhere along the roads where there are higher elevations so people can leave.
You don't have to solve that.
Right. I'm just saying that I think that the fact that we were handed alternatives, and I think this goes back to the inherent flaws. This is a flawed site. It's a salt marsh. It was a salt marsh, and this has got so many flaws in it. There's only so much you can do in it. Building platforms and worrying about access in case of a flood.
Well, do we even need to spend much time on this? Because the applicant has rejected out of hand all of these other proposed alternatives because they're not financially feasible.
Yeah, because you have to build the infrastructure for all of them.
Which isn't cost effective.
Which isn't cost effective. So that leaves us with the one alternative that doesn't require this, is not legal. And so we can't even consider that one. And that's alternative G.
But the applicant will give you a pro forma on a 25 lot no fill alternative. And the applicant, if you look at the language, he didn't give you variable costs. So I think there's room for interpretation on that issue. I mean, I fully understand the applicant doesn't want to build a lesser alternative, but I'm not sure that they gave you the information that would say they can't possibly do that. They didn't go to give you numbers for a no fill alternative.
No, they didn't, but I'm going to take them at their word.
Well, right. I'm going to take them at their word, but just taking the financials out of it, we're still impacting 34 acres. We're still cutting down 45% of the trees, 367 of them, and we're still building platforms, and we're still relying on Cooper Avenue for emergency access.
Well,
And,
again,
you know,
yeah.
right, so,
you could.
Well, I don't
Sure.
know that we're relying on Cooper. I don't know where they would put the houses.
Right, exactly. I
so they
don't,
gave us, we have diagrams, right?
Do
But-
we? Okay.
Right.
but you
They
don't,
have to build we have to build a platform, to put all this stuff on, right?
not in a no-fill alternative. You can let them, well, I shouldn't say that. I would have to go back, I'd have to go back and look at the plan.
I looked at it yesterday.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. I
Right. I did a lot of work looking at
Thank
alternatives
you.
prior to this meeting, right?
Okay,
I mean, I could be wrong, and I'm sure the applicant will let us know if we are. We'll read it in the newspaper. But
the fundamental issue that you've identified is the filling in the floodplain, right?
correct.
So it seems to me that you would want to say that an acceptable alternative would be one that didn't involve filling in the floodplain, that didn't involve cutting down so many trees, and that solved the access problem. Because those, I think, are your three key negative findings. You don't have to design that project for them.
I think that's correct. I think that sums it up in a nutshell.
Agreed.
Cindy, you have something to say? Cindy, are you with us?
I'm here. Yeah, I'm sorry. I thought you were talking to Lou.
No.
Yeah,
no.
here.
Lou, do you agree with everything that Stuart just said?
Yes,
Okay, so at this point in time then, we ask Stuart to draft a findings document that reflects tonight's discussions and conversations.
Yes, please.
Now, our next scheduled meeting is April 20.
22nd.
We do have, as Betty Ann pointed out, two dates that we're also holding in case we needed them to continue doing this work. It's only 9/11. We could have gone further.
No, you don't have findings in front of you.
Right, we don't need it. We don't need to go further tonight.
My suggestion would be this.
Still have executive session.
Let me
don't
see
forget.
how long. it's gonna
Right, we
take
still
me.
have to go into executive or advice of council session, correct, Mr. Smith?
Well, it's an executive session and an advice of council session.
Right.
Okay.
But to wrap up this piece and talk about the next meeting,
Right,
let me see how long it will take me to, I think the 30th is too soon for me
soon.
to have you, and you're not gonna have read them. Let's
So we're
see
gonna
how,
cross that off our calendars.
yeah, let's see if I can get you enough time so we could meet on the 6th and start working on them.
I mean, we're gonna meet like this again, obviously,
Yeah,
so.
once you accept the FEIS on the 22nd, it's gonna take me, some days to print it and so on, but we're gonna be under a clock. So
Correct.
you wanna keep that in mind. And the findings are gonna be a lengthy document.
Correct. Okay, so we can get started on draft findings as soon as you can get them.
As soon as I can get them to you.
And we're holding the 6th meeting on the evening of the 6th, and we're holding, although nobody's working, we can always meet earlier in the day.
Yeah, well, we're working, working.
You're working from home. People are working from home.
I personally was happy not to have to drive, so there you go.
I know, but you got snow this week.
7 inches 2 days ago,
You got 7 inches?
7 inches. yeah.
Okay,
Oh.
all right, so that's the plan, and we'll be on the agenda for the 22nd as well, for the FEIS and to continue the discussion of the draft findings document.
Okay,
Okay, everyone's in agreement?
Yes.
We need a motion to adjourn into executive session. For
So
the
moved.
who are watching us on YouTube, let me just explain what's going to happen. We are going to go off screen and to go into executive session. We will come back to this forum only to adjourn the meeting. There'll be no further discussion about this. So I'm sorry, we had a motion to go into advice and council session.
Yes, so moved.
And we have a second.
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 All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. So
And I
now-
just sent everybody the number to call into a second time, just so you have it in your inbox.
now you're gonna turn this off, or do you
We
want?
have to-
I'm gonna mute you all. You can turn your cameras off, but I'll mute you. for now. Richard, you can just hit stop video to turn your camera on.
Okay.
I am exhausted right now. I look like alfalfa.
Oh.
You all know who alfalfa is, right?
No, nobody, yeah. I think
Even
we
the
all
young
know. Maybe
knows
Christie
who
doesn't.
alfalfa is.
Do we have a motion to return?
Not till we get everybody back.
Okay.
We don't have a quorum back. Cindy has to call in. And Richard, if you.
Okay, Cindy should be able to
Oh,
speak now.
Can you hear me?
Here.
Yeah, but I'm gonna mute your computer. There we go. Okay, try again.
Hi, Greg. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay.
See you. Start your video.
I'll do my best. It's not working,
I
but
can probably start it for you. Let me see.
Yeah, Greg, you need to start my video too.
It's gonna
There we
ask
go.
you to start
Oh.
video. I just
Okay, here we go. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, I need a motion for us to come out of executive and advice of council session.
so moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and then based on our discussion just now, I need a motion to waive the privilege from the memo of June 19th, 2019, and authorize the staff to release the memo. Right, Bob? I got that right? I wrote it down. So I need a
So
motion
moved.
to
So
waive.
moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay, I'm gonna call the vote on this one. Lou,
Yes.
Richard,
Yes.
Cindy,
Yes.
and I vote yes. Okay, that's the last item of business. I need a motion to adjourn our very interesting planning board meeting by.
So moved.
All right.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Greg, for doing.
Thank you. Thanks, Greg.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Be safe and
Bye.
keep social distance and pray for the best. I have family members with coronavirus now, so we're best. Okay.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.